the Evolution Security Podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. We've got everyone here today, Eric, Aaron, and of course myself, Brian. How you guys doing?
Man, I'm doing wonderful. Good to see you guys.
Yes, good to be back together, all three of us. We missed you a couple of times.
Yeah,
we missed you a couple of times, Brian, but hey, you were doing some flying, which is awesome.
I'm doing some stuff. Yeah, I'll talk about that later, but hey, we got another great guest this week, Mr. Paul Sharp. And we'll explain who he is and what he is when we get him on. But we want to talk real quick about some of the folks that helped make this happen for us. I'm going to mention Origin of Maine, my number one supplement. And I'm looking forward to this week. I got some of the new krill oil showing up, so I'm going to start trying that. And that's actually something my doctor recommended, not them by name, but fish oil of some type, 1,000 milligrams 3 times a day. And that's actually for my heart and lipid levels. That's a huge thing, and it's something that they do offer along with all of their other fine U.S.-made garments and apparel. And I think Eric wants to share somebody with us as well.
Yes, Tenacor at tenacor.com. They have been with us from the beginning. Jeff Mount and his crew, they get after it with us. Like we've mentioned before, every ECQC that we've hosted recently, those guys have been there getting after it with us, both on the mats and with the scenarios, so on and so forth. Those guys are doing the work, so go out and support them. You know, one of the things that I was thinking about is I know Jeff was mentioning the mag pouches. We're going to have to hit him up on that. So, so go to tenacor.com and check them out and use EvoSec at checkout for 10% off.
Did we mention the discount on Origin?
Oh, man, I'm sorry. It is EvoSec 10, and of course that is originofmaine.com. And yeah, you do get 10% off your order for using EvoSec 10, EVOSEC 10. So get on there and get yourself some supplements.
Great.
Right on. Well, hey, let's move right into this interview, guys.
Yeah, we have a lot to cover. Let's get into it.
Well, we'd like to welcome to the show Mr. Paul Sharp. Hello, Paul.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Good, man. This has been a long time coming. We are super stoked to have you on here. And although we know a ton about you and what you do and all of the training and that you offer and engage in, we'd be really interested in hearing a little bit about yourself, your bio. Just give us a bit of who you are and what you do and how you got here.
Yeah, so I started martial arts when I was a little kid, like a lot of people, wrestled, boxed, all that good stuff, all the way up into college, and then began my journey from there. I worked construction at that point in my life, and had spent most of my time just in the sport world, really having fun with that. And then the market crashed, and I needed a job, and so I got hired as a police officer. And I guess they had the bar set real low, so it was easy for me to get in. And I began to work as a law enforcement officer, and that's where I really started to focus more on the self-defense side of things. And somewhere in there, some guys that had been my instructors at the academy remembered me. And when they started up a business, they asked me if I'd like to be an assistant instructor, which was really just a guy to hang targets and paint steel. And I said, yeah, I'll do it, man. And so that kind of got me started on the instructor route. And that was a little over 22 years ago. And I've been doing this ever since, and it's just morphed into all that I do now, which is I run a jiu-jitsu gym, and I teach self-defense stuff as much as I can. And I work with the Shivworks. It's a group of us called the Shivworks Collective. There's 6 of us, and we try to teach people what we think is effective self-defense strategies. And yeah, that's about it. I mean, it's kind of hard to talk about yourself. I realize.
No, there's a ton of stuff. People can go check out your website and get a little more background about there. We know about the collective. We know about Shivworks, but we want to get that information back out to the rest of our community, because we've had most of you on here, and we want to get all of you on here. And obviously you will probably be back again. But one of the things we're really excited about having you on for is your personal experience and connection to law enforcement and all of that. And what's going on, things are a little wonky.
Yeah, Paul, we really wanted to have you on because this is a time when people can really use some perspective from you guys that have been on the job. Now, the current state of essentially hate for police, it's something that we've never seen in our lifetime. I know that it's happened earlier, in the 60s. There was a heavy movement of hate for police officers. But, things like, show networks distancing themselves from, the show Cops and Live PD, which I'll say again, like I said on another show, Live PD was one of my favorite shows to just chill while I'm sitting on the couch. Yeah. So I was pissed about that.
Yeah.
But, so we'd like a conversation to get your take and your perspective. I mean, let's just open the floor to talk about this situation with you as a former officer.
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting to kind of see all this going down. When I went through the academy, the police academy, a number of my instructors had been police officers in the 60s and 70s. And so they had that perspective of doing passenger side approaches because the various Marxist-based factions that were out there would do drive-bys on them, if they approached a car in the roadway. So they had to approach from the passenger side to keep their back to the wall, so to speak, and make it harder for them to be a target for people in cars driving by. And it was just interesting. They had to deal with the Molotov cocktails of fire bombings and all that stuff. And then it kind of went away. Things kind of died down, and I don't know if it's because that generation grew up a little bit, but now that generation is also the professors and the shot callers in a lot of places. And what we've seen in several protests in this area is you'll see professors from universities out there with these guys agitating and stirring them up. And that's kind of disheartening because you would think their perspective would be, as a leader, would be, let's have a peaceful protest, because that's the foundation of our society, right? That's what the Constitution is based upon, is allowing people to have that right to peacefully assemble and peacefully protest and have their grievances, their voices heard, correct? And when these agitators get involved and they ramp it into violence, that kind of nullifies the whole process. And so we've got to find a way to get around that. But it's interesting from a police perspective, from a peacekeeping perspective, how do you balance that kind of stuff? And also, how do you win back the hearts and minds of the people? How do you win back when it's amazing to me. I have actually had conversations with folks recently that I never thought I'd have to have about the militarization of the police and about things of that nature. And I thought, you of all people should know better. You are family. Like, you should know that that's not true. That's a narrative put forth by the media and by various factions that's just not true. I have a picture from New York City. It's from the 30s. It's a motorcycle, a police motorcycle, and in the sidecar is a guy sitting behind a mounted 30 cal machine gun, full auto machine gun.
Wow.
Like, you're not going to see that nowadays. Texas, I have a picture from Texas where the police there had a tank, an actual tank. You're not going to see that nowadays. So this militarization of the police is a false narrative. It's just not happening. Most police departments don't even have fully automatic weapons. So what are we calling militarization? That they've got these some sort of like armored vehicles. Okay, I'll give you that. They have the armored vehicles, but the other stuff, I think there's a disconnect, and police departments are notoriously bad at PR. They're notoriously bad at addressing these issues in a rational fashion. They kind of look at it like, well, we're just not going to answer. We're just not going to respond. We're just going to do our job and not tell them the other side of the story. We're just going to leave. If you think about it, how many times do we see a criminal defense attorney talking to the press, but you never see the state's attorney? You never see the chief of police come out and say, yeah, of course we arrested this guy. No, he wasn't on his way to church. He's a child molester. But the law enforcement side of the house will sit back and let the other side dictate the narrative. And it's kind of like a fight, right? The first significant hit sometimes wins, most of the time wins. So you have to get that control and get that first hit in. And it just seems like law enforcement has just been terrible at that side of it. Those pictures, a lot of law enforcement places, if you look at their original, even like Bonnie and Clyde, I mean, that was a classic L-shaped ambush with bars, like Browning automatic rifles. They didn't go out there with this, people have this rose-colored glasses view of the old school coppers, thinking, well, they were just out there with their revolver, their trusty revolver. That's not what did all, like, they drove that car back into town with the body still in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that wouldn't happen now. Like that would,
not at all.
These people that want to talk about the militarization of the police, when was the last time you saw a copper walking around with Browning automatic rifles setting up an L-shaped ambush on two bank robbers? It just doesn't happen. Look at what happened in the Hollywood shootout. LAPD didn't even have rifles on the street to respond. And yet the media and various factions will sit here and go on and on about the militarization of the police. And I'm sitting here thinking, if that Hollywood shootout had happened during the Dillinger days, they would have responded with Browning automatic rifles and shot those guys into pieces.
And that firearm would have had the ability to dismantle what they had built.
Yeah, literally, right? Like literally, that would have shot them into pieces. And so I think at some point we have to find a way to convey to the public that if there are things that they don't like, if there are things that they don't want to see, the perception of militarization of the police, the uniforms, or whatever it might be, let's have a conversation and let's talk about why. I had a friend bring up to me the outside vest covers, the outside carriers. Like, that's just not, that looks like a military rig. You got this outside vest cover, you got all your stuff up on your chest, like a chest rig. And I said, well, hey, man, there's a real good reason for that. There's actually a medical reason for that. Quite a few guys end up with hip replacements. They end up with back injuries. They end up with all kinds of stuff. One of our guys at the department I worked for actually used the military study showing that getting that stuff off your hips and changing it to a load-bearing vest reduced the rate of injury. and increase the longevity of the officer. And so you go from having a guy who ends up pensioning out at a young age due to a medical disability. You go to a guy who serves for a full 30 years without the injury, because you take the weight off of his hips and you take the weight off of all the hot spots that happen and you put it up on his chest, and it's better for him. It's healthier for him. And so when you explain it to them like that, then they go, oh, I never even thought about that. It has nothing to do with militarization. It has to do with health, it has to do with efficiency. And so if we could get that across to folks, that no, they're not trying to carry all the gear that some guy would be carrying on the streets in Iraq. What they're trying to do is get the gear off of their hips and up onto their chest, onto a load-bearing vest, so that it's more evenly dispersed across their frame, rather than on all the places where we know, due to studies, it causes low back injuries. And so I would rather have a guy, as a taxpayer, I would rather have a guy that can work 30 years than have a guy that 14 years in pensions out, and now he collects 50 or up to 65% of his pay rate to sit at home because he has a back injury and can't do anything else. And I'm sure he would prefer that too. Like, nobody wants to sit at home on injury. I mean, even the scam artists know it just doesn't work out well. You can't do anything else, so you might as well work. So if we could find ways to keep guys working, and that's where that kind of stuff comes from. So when we have those kind of conversations, it seems to tone that side of the house down a little bit, because we educate them on what's really going on there. It has nothing to do with militarization. It has everything to do with health and wellness. And so I think we do a bad job, or the police do a bad job in that regard, in ever picking up that discussion point and really addressing it.
Well, real quick, Paul, why do you think that is, that police are not good at PR?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think to some degree, it's the quiet professional type attitude that's passed down. When I started, it was very much you just be about it, you don't talk about it.
And that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you go do your job and you don't talk about it at home. We were told, like, don't take your job home. Don't talk about this stuff to your friends. One, you can't. If it's an investigation, you can't. If it's an active investigation, it can't be discussed. And then two, do you really want to tell your friends, like, yeah, man, I was at this guy's house and you could see dented into the plaster, the lath and plaster of the wall. You could see where he slammed his 3-year-old kid into the wall, holding him by the feet like a baseball bat. Like, who wants to hear that? So you just internalize it and you never talk about it and you just do your job. And I think that gets entrenched into the profession. And also there's another side of it where guys just assume you're always going to get Monday morning quarterbacked. You're never going to be right no matter what you do. And so why bother trying to defend yourself?
Yeah, just don't even mess with it, right?
Yeah, just do your job, and they might never appreciate you, and that's just how it is.
That's something I talk with some of my law enforcement friends about. It's a thankless job. It's not that you'll never be thanked for what you do. There's going to be a mother or a kin or a brother or sister that's going to thank you for responding and doing your job. But in general, the public is not going to go out of their way to say, hey, I'm glad you're here, especially when all they're shown is horror and force. One of the things that really bothers me is that people are just not being shown the other side of this. There's a lot of defund, dismantle, redirect fund stuff going on. And, what we need is more training. And there's no one I know that's involved in jiu-jitsu that doesn't agree with that.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing is, we can't just stop responding to calls and send a healthcare professional, because what happens when 3 or 4 of them get killed?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Oh,
right?
man.
That's scary. We have social workers. When I worked in the resident officer program, we would have social workers come out and ride with us, and various members of the community would come out and ride with us, and all of us working towards the same goal. We're trying to find a solution. We want to make a better life. There's no and and I know you got to be careful of broad sweeping statements from either direction, right? Either positive or negative. But for the most part, I don't know of too many people who don't want their kids to have a better life than they had, and who don't want their kids to have a good life. Like I've talked to dads, I've talked to moms who, they make their kids sleep on the side of the house that has the brick front in the apartment complex, because if somebody does a drive-by, the kids are sleeping on the floor below the bricks. So hopefully their kid won't catch a stray round. Now, you can't tell me anybody wants to live like that. Like there's no way they want their kids to live that way. So we're all looking for a solution. We're all looking for some way to resolve these issues and make life better. But we would have various members from the community come out and ride with us, and they would encounter for the first time. And I remember I had a pastor, he got back in the car with me, and he said to me, well, that's a very different version of him than what I see on Sunday mornings. And I said, you're right, Pastor. This is the version we see. You see the other version. You see the version that's dressed up and well behaved. We see this version. So when you want to throw us under the bus, the proverbial bus, Monday morning, remember what you just saw. And keep that in mind, that maybe this is what we saw and this is what we were dealing with. And so I think about that, and I think about, you have somebody like that come out and respond to some of these guys, some of these situations. They're so volatile. They're, even in the hospitals, when they respond to, the behavioral ward, or, what used to be called the psych ward, they have security with them. They don't go in there by themselves. They don't go in there thinking they're just going to give this guy a hug and have a deep, meaningful conversation with him, and that's going to settle this dude down. If he's having an episode and he's seeing things that the rest of us aren't seeing, and he's freaking out and responding to whatever it is that's going through his head, they're going to need the police. They're going to need guys with the ability to control that person physically before they can ever get to where they can try to make some inroads mentally. And I'm worried. I'm legit worried that they're going to make some mistakes in this process of sorting this all out, and they're going to put some good people in bad places, in bad positions, and they're going to get hurt.
Absolutely. Paul, this is Eric here. Man, it is wonderful to have you on the show. And I think that everything that you're putting out there needs to be heard, and we're glad that we have you to kind of set some of the record straight. One of the things that you mentioned that I think is key is you mentioned Marxist elements back in the 60s. Well, it is easily researched that the current agitators, they're straight up from Marxist organizations. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a big factor. If you watch any or listen to any of the interviews with the Soviet defectors in the 60s and 70s, they told us what was coming. They told us their plan. Like they were playing the long game. They're looking at 3-4 generations, and then we'll be able to take over. Like, we're not going to be able to just come in here, and take over the United States by force. That's never going to happen. But give us 3 or 4 generations and we'll take over, because by that time we will have the minds of your children. And that's what's happened. We have this heavy Marxist influenced movements that are out there, and they are warping the minds of our kids to think that the United States is this evil empire, that there's really nothing good, and that everything that everything needs to be just torn apart and rebuilt. And that's just not true. That is just, we know this, right? We're preaching to the choir, but there are other great countries, but there's no country like this.
No, I'll give Jordan Peterson the credit for where I heard it. I don't know if he necessarily did the research, but if you look at the world as a whole, every living, breathing human in the United States is in the 1%. You have no idea how bad it is in some of these other countries. It doesn't mean we don't have room to improve. There's always room to improve. And there's some areas, there's probably more room for improvement than others, obviously. But a lot of this is kind of like the Floyd situation kicked some of this off. Those officers needed more training, clearly.
Oh, yes.
There's no question about it. But does that mean that everything is broken? Absolutely not. This entire, ACAB painted on stuff, even here in our town in Olympia, all cops are not bad.
Right.
That's just not true. And all cops are not racist. All cops aren't out to, suppress you or marginalize you or shut you down. They're out to do better for the community, but the elephant in the room is, have you tried not breaking the law?
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's a thing.
If I'm in an altercation with a police officer, for whatever reason, I'm going to be respectful and I'm going to understand that they're not going to mess around with me. I'm not going to try to take their weapons and use them against them and then expect to be, exonerated because they were beating me up. That's not how it works. That whole mindset just makes my head spin. I don't understand it. Those guys would have rather stayed home that night. I can guarantee you that.
Right. It's unfortunate. There's a thing. So with the Floyd thing, I can go through, I've probably got 40 or 50 instructor manuals for various hand-to-hand systems for law enforcement, all the way back to the 50s. There's nowhere in there where they tell you to kneel on that guy's neck like that, or the other person that wasn't seen kneeling on his lower back like that. And here's the thing. I can take my lightest person in jiu-jitsu and I can kneel on their head and they will get away from me. They will get out, because it's not even a good way to hold someone down. You have no real mechanical advantage there, because you're not stopping their hips. You're not stopping their ability to move their legs. So those guys, none of what they were doing, I can't find where anybody trained anyone to do that. There's just no support there from the training world. And so, like you said, kind of the elephant in the room on that regard, that was just so wrong. It was like two left shoes, man. Like, you can't do anything with that, And so from that perspective, when people say we need to defund the police or abolish the police, which is really what they want, that's not the answer. The answer is we need better training. We need more realistic and relevant training. And it needs to be recent. A little bit every day is better than 4 hours every 6 months or once a year, if they even get that. So we would do stuff in roll call where we would call people in, and off the street, we would call them into the roll call room, and go through some defensive tactics, go through knife defense, go through deploying their OC, under pressure with a little bit of pummeling, a little bit of hand fighting, and just get guys used to staying calm in those bad situations. Because if you do look at that situation in Minnesota, mechanical asphyxiation or positional asphyxiation, whatever you want to call it, it's a thing. And there's nobody that's training anybody in any recent time. I went through the academy in 1998. They were talking about it then, about don't handcuff somebody and leave them on their stomach. Don't, you know what I mean? Don't leave someone in a position where their weight is on their solar plexus and they can't breathe in and breathe out. Like, you're going to have a problem. You're going to end up hurting someone if you do that. And so a lot of the discussion, a lot of the fervor around this, while, yeah, I understand it's warranted. Nobody wants to see someone killed like that. However, to take the emphasis off of training or to take funding away from training is not going to get them the answers that they're seeking. They need to put more effort into training, more effort into more funding, or just defer funding that's going to other things into training. And then a lot of these issues wouldn't be happening. I told one of my friends as a chief, and we were having a discussion about this stuff, and I said, what's the general payout? What do you guys just pay out when somebody comes and they have a complaint and the city's like, listen, just pay them? Because that's, as frustrating as that is, that's what happens a lot of the times. You want your day in court, you want your hearing, you want the ability to say, this is what I did. This is all the training literature that backs what I did. This is what supports everything I did. These are the laws that support what I did. So their complaint is bogus, but that never happens because it's cheaper just to pay them and they go away. And so I was talking to him about it, and he told me the number, it's their average payout. And I said, are you kidding me? I said, with that number right there, you could pay for one of your officers to come to my gym for 5 to 6 years, training 6 days a week, an hour to 2 hours a day. That would eliminate those payouts because you wouldn't be cranking on somebody's arm in a way that it's not meant to be turned or cranked or twisted. You wouldn't be doing all these things that are ineffective. You would be learning how to manage a body, control a resisting person. You would be doing it every day against other athletic people that are working the same end game as you. So that makes it even more challenging and more fun. And you'd be getting healthy. And the spiritual, mental, emotional benefits of it, where you're learning to control yourself under pressure and not lose it when you get bumped in the face or you get, you know what I mean? Like those things where guys just lose it. Like if it's something that you do every day and you're habituated to it, then it's just normal. If we're wrestling around and I get elbowed in the eye, I'm not going to look at Eric and be like, hey, dude, what'd you do that for? I'm just going to be like, oh, man, that was pretty good. Like, hey, you got me good. I'm probably going to have a black eye tomorrow. Like we're not going to get upset about it because it's just part of what we're doing. We're just tussling, man. We're just working. And bumps and bruises and all that just are part of it. If you have an officer that's in an environment for a year, he or she's going to be a totally different animal than the officer that's not in that environment for a year, handling identical calls.
Well, Paul, one follow-up on that. First, I'd like to make this statement. Our nation, does its best when we have the rule of law. I mean, that's just, that's an axiom.
Right.
And what the American populace does not realize, because they've been brainwashed, like some from the other elements we spoke on earlier, the professors in the college environment, so on and so forth. Well, law enforcement is integral to that rule of law. And I just hope that we have some form of a renaissance where some of the more alternative media sources can start to change that narrative. But it's definitely a uphill battle. So I will also say this: you being a black belt in jiu-jitsu, think of this utopia. If I can borrow a term from the left, what if every police officer was a purple belt?
Oh yeah,
I mean, wouldn't that be awesome?
that would be awesome. Remember, what was his name? Andrew Yang, one of the presidential candidates. That was kind of his thing. Was, every officer needs to be a purple belt. Yeah, I don't know much about his politics, but I thought that was pretty cool. I'm like, man, I don't know much about this guy. I haven't paid too much attention. I kind of in the political world, I fall pretty much into the libertarian side of things, where if you're consenting adults, it's your business and not mine. But when he said that, I thought, you got my attention. Like I'm listening.
Definitely.
Yeah, please continue. So, but yeah, I think, there is that element. We can't rule out the effect or the influence of the Marxism that came into play in the 60s, of the fact that the Russians are playing the long game, and the Chinese, they're playing the long game. With the Chinese, that was as a mentor of mine said, in Korea, we were fighting the Chinese, not the Koreans. And we can't overlook that, and that influence, and that warping, so to speak, of the minds. And we've got to win them back. We have got to win them back, to see that it goes back to Peel's principles, of policing. Back in England, the police are from the community, of the community, and for the community. And we've got to get back to that kind of stuff too. And I'm not talking about the TikTok and the serving ice cream cones, and I guess that has its place. I would prefer to not see officers doing that stuff, but there has to be that element of, this guy grew up in this town. This guy lives in this town. This guy has skin in the game. This is his town too. And I know, like, residency requirements is a sticky topic for a lot of police departments and hiring and stuff like that. But there's something to that. When you're from the area, and you work in the area, and you live in the area, and you have skin in the game, and the schools are where your kids are going to go, and I think that would influence both sides of the equation here, because now the community sees you as one of them, right? Like Peel was talking about. And then you see yourself as one of them. Like, you see ownership. You take ownership of this community, because this is where I live, man. And maybe, I think there might be something there that we're missing in law enforcement. And I know guys will vehemently disagree with me, because I've had those disagreements with my friends that are on the job. But I really think there is something to it, man. When you live in the neighborhood, you care more about it. And when your kids go to those schools, you care more about them than when you can just go, hey, not my problem. I'm driving to my neighborhood, which is 45 minutes or an hour away, totally different town, and I never see any of the problem children that I got to work with. I mean, what do you guys think about that?
No, I think you're really kind of hitting the nail on the head there, Paul, honestly. And like you said, it's difficult to get people to see that solution. And that's also not an easy solution. But, this is a much broader topic that I'm going to mention real quick. And this is what I believe, in the small amount of study and experience that I've got on this planet, the biggest problem in the United States right now as a whole is loss of community and family. Because if you roll back 40 years, we still were pretty community and family based. And that has really
just gone out the window. And what you're talking about, the concept you're talking about, is involving community with policing. And that's something that we surely, like I said, it exists in some small towns to an extent.
Sure.
But when you get into larger jurisdictions, they just can't do it, you know? And one of the things that I think people have a vision of what they want to see by abolishing the police or getting rid of this, department, or making them stop these, arresting people for these kind of crimes. And I just don't believe in the long picture, in the long game, that the solution that they want is the solution that's going to become from them actually getting their way with that, because some departments are already caving, and we're already seeing officers walk off the job as well. So I think that's an unintended consequence by the people who seem to support this. I don't think it's an unintended consequence by the people that are really stirring the mustard on this, though.
Yeah, for sure. I think the people that are pushing hard for the abolish the police type thing, I think they're happy to see these guys walk off. They're happy to see these guys, and it's funny, right? A friend was joking around about the same people that are saying to defund the police are also the same people that were telling you a couple months ago you don't need guns, who a couple months before that were telling you that the U.S. government is basically this fascist, white supremacist run government entity. Well, hang on, man. Like, if you're telling me that the people that are running the government right now are the same people that tried to load some of my relatives in train cars, shouldn't I have a gun? And yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. So you got to wonder what their end game is, and do they really want a better, safer community, or are they looking for something else? And that's,
I think there's a lot of groups that we're hearing back all of this movement that are not groups that are good for the U.S. and are not good for you and me. There's some really scary extremist types that are really helping fuel these fires, and it is not a good thing. And I don't believe the folks that are trying to have their voices heard and get some change, which I fully support.
right.
I don't believe the result of the action that's happening is going to be the change that they want.
Right. And that's the thing. In my opinion, the change that they want is a more community-based, community-oriented police force. And I'm down with that. I get it. I've done it, and I've seen the results, and it's effective. But what I think they're going to end up with is something that's not at all community-based or community-oriented, and I'm really not sure what it's going to end up looking like. I'm kind of worried about that. Not kind of, I am very worried about where this is all going to end up going. Particularly, in, I think it was October of 1969, wasn't the Montreal police the group that went on strike? And they had a police strike, and within hours, it was insanity. Within hours, there were snipers. There were all kinds of factions in the streets performing roadblocks. A lot of what we're seeing, where they have these roadblocks, they're not letting people through, and all kinds of things that went sideways. I think if you Google the Montreal police strike, I think it was 1969.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah, that was a scary time, and I don't know if people are fully aware of that. Sometimes it seems like, people, I know I'm guilty of thinking that history begins and ends with my memory. And, sometimes we need to crack a book open and look through some times before us and say, oh, wow, this has been tried before and it wasn't very successful. It wasn't a good idea. Yes, there are, we all agreed, there are changes that should happen. There are changes that need to occur, but maybe not what they're looking for.
Right. And the whole, you're not going to defund and retrain.
No.
That's simply not.
Yeah, that doesn't work that way.
If you defund and defer funds to other departments, to social health and those types of other workers, you're actually probably going to exacerbate the problem.
Right.
Because we'll have even less officers with even less training. And again, I don't believe that that's by accident. I think that's by design. I actually think they want to see this type of failure.
I believe so too. I believe the Marxist roots of some things are starting to show. And it's funny. You have to look at your government officials and some of them and understand or realize rather that these are some of the same folks that say, hey, we need to stimulate the economy, so let's raise taxes. Like, that's not how that works, man.
That's laughable.
Yeah, that's not how that works, dude. But they really think that's how it works, and so these are also the same people, like you said, that are going to say, hey, defund the police and retrain the police. Wait, that's not how that works.
Well, Paul, if I can add, I may have this wrong. I believe it was Lenin. It may have been Marx, but somewhere in the Marxist theories don't they call those folks useful idiots?
Yes. Yeah, useful idiots, man. Yeah. Yeah, man. Unfortunately, we're dealing with our share of them. So, I don't know.
Well, Aaron, what you got?
Yeah, Paul, one of the topics I really wanted to hear you talk about is this movement. I think it's been going on a while, but a couple of weeks ago, the president signed this executive order to ban chokeholds, quote, unless the officer's life depends on it.
Right.
And a lot of us that have been choked multiple times, that's not too scary. If anyone actually knows how a choke works, they would rather, I'll let you expound on it because it's not what they think it is.
Right. And that's and the funny thing is most departments would not allow the quote unquote chokehold without it being the threat rising to lethal already. So it was one of those, I'm gonna point at the sky and tell you it's blue and you're gonna agree. Yeah, we already knew that, dude. But it's yeah. If I was thinking about it, I'm like, I've probably been choked to some degree in jiu-jitsu every day for 30 plus years, and I'm fine.
So you're telling me there's something you like about that?
Yeah, there is something I dig about it. Yeah, but the thing is, it's like it's this whole. We're doomed to keep repeating this. So in 1992, I believe it was the Rodney King incident occurred, right? And a few years before the Rodney King incident happened, LA had banned chokes. And so when the Rodney King incident went down, you had these guys mercilessly beating this man with these batons, these PR-24s. And now this is hearsay, but I was told that there were guys who were on the scene who were like, just get on his back and choke him out. And they were like, we're not allowed because chokes have been banned. So basically, if I get on this guy's back, choke him unconscious, throw cuffs on him, sit him up, give him sternum rub and wake him up, no harm done, right? Because we do that in jiu-jitsu pretty much every day. But if I do that, I'm going to get fired because I just violated SOP. So I'm going to keep hitting him with this baton and I won't get fired because it's within SOP. Isn't that kind of crazy to think about?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Right?
Like I think if you look it up, you'll find that LAPD had banned chokes shortly before that incident, like 5-6 years before that incident, maybe a little longer, but chokes were banned. And any one of us that were watching that incident go down who trained, because I started training in 93. So any of us that watched that incident and watched the footage, we all thought the same thing. Just get on his back, throw the hooks in, and sink the choke and knock him out. And yet they were restricted from doing so. And so here we are again in this place where chokes are bad, chokes are evil. Let's ban chokes. And what's left? The baton, taser, some sort of
The gun.
Yeah, the gun. 5 or 6 guys piled on top of one dude. Like, that's a recipe for disaster right there. You're going to suffocate that guy. If you put 5 or 6 full-grown adults on top of another adult, it's not going to end well. We're talking, over 1,000 pounds of weight on a human form mashed into the ground. That never goes well. And it shouldn't happen. Just let them get on the guy, sink the choke, sit him up, handcuff him first. Now he's under control. Sit him up and then wake him up. A few pats on the back or a little sternum rub, and they wake up and they're probably appreciative, at least I would be, that I didn't get tased, I didn't get beat with a baton, or I didn't get shot. Or I didn't have 5 guys, which I've had because I was a role player in our in-house academy. So I've had the 4 or 5 guys pile on top of me trying to hold me down. And that's pretty miserable. And you get injured. And you also, here's the other side of it. When they're doing these pain compliance, these pressure points, these pressure point control tactics, the pain compliance things, it just makes you mad. Because you're just being put in pain. And after a while, the body does what it's supposed to do, which is dump enough adrenaline into your system. You can't feel it. And then you turn big, green, and ugly. And now what's their options? Because there's 3 or 4 of them. They can't control you. And you just stood up and now you want to fight. So they shoot you. And it's justified. And as some guys say, it's a bad use of force leads to a good shoot. And so, it's like, listen, man, why would you take away one of the most effective tools you could have an officer with a little bit of training use? And I've used what they call the lateral vascular neck restraint, right? I've used that choke hold, so to speak, multiple times to subdue somebody, throw the cuffs on them, sit them up, and if they weren't out, or even if they were out, just wake them up. And then I can't tell you how many times I've had guys look at me and go, "What happened? What's going on?" I go, "You're handcuffed, you're under arrest, and this is what happened."
Get some.
And they have less force. People have to really understand this, that it's less force than even pepper spray.
Oh, yeah.
Pepper spray would ruin their day, their evening, considerably worse than having a little nap. And it's that simple.
That really is it. I try to, it's kind of the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I would much rather have somebody choke me than pepper spray me any day of the week. Like, don't even come near me with pepper spray. I'm the ultimate Caucasian. The 23andMe, those DNA reports, like 98.2% or something crazy like that of my DNA is from Europe, Northern Europe, like Scottish and Scandinavian. If you even open pepper spray around me, I'm going to break out in hives. So I would much rather, and I always thought about that when I was dealing with people. I would much rather take them down, control them, or pin them against the wall, control them if I have to, knock them out with a choke. And then, or even not even knock them out, just diminish them enough that I can get the cuffs on them. And then let them recover and then tell them what just happened. Like, hey, man, like, we're done now, right? We're done fighting, and a high 90% of the time, I would have guys just tell me like, yeah, man, I'm done. Because once you control somebody in that manner where they understand they literally cannot fight you, there's nothing they can do. You took them down, you pinned them against the wall or the car or whatever it was. You completely physically dominated them and subdued them. It's like dog mentality. It's pack mentality or animal mentality, animal kingdom stuff. You mentally dominated them, kind of like a dog holding another dog down by the neck. You let them up, they don't want to fight anymore because they know now it's just going to happen again. And so when you do that to somebody, it's a very humane way of controlling the situation. Maybe the optics don't look as good as if you could just magically no touch knock out somebody. But the optics to me look a lot better than 5 or 6 guys piled on top of one dude, or 4 or 5 guys swinging batons at a guy, or pepper spraying everybody in the vicinity, including any kids that might be there. Because you know how that goes on a call. There's always kids there and everything else. And all the other things that happen, or even worse, some guy pulling his pistol out because he's freaking out and can't get in control. So he goes for the magic talisman and he whips this, his Harry Potter wand out, his pistol. And the bad guy just looks at the pistol and goes, "You can't shoot me." Or the bad guy doesn't care because it's not the first time he's had a gun pulled on him. And so now what? So now we have a situation that escalated so far out of control when you could have just dominated him with good position and ended it with a common submission that we all have used weekly, if not daily, in the gym.
Well, and I'll tell you, as a civilian, I carry my palm pepper spray daily as a less lethal option. But the last thing I want to do is douse somebody with that and then have to handle them.
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, you've used it because you chose to do that. And then you got to load them in your car. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, man. We got into a scrap with a guy in a stairwell. And he was just drunk and he was being unruly and he didn't live in that apartment complex. So they called and we come in there to deal with him. And he right away wants to fight. He's on this landing and he wants to fight and he's not leaving. And he just is out of his mind drunk. And I go to grab him. As I go to grab him, my partner sprays him. And it gets all over everything. And I am not a happy camper. I look like one of those 80s techno bands with the weird makeup. I had a red stripe diagonally across my face. And I thought, man, like seriously, dude, this guy's 140 pounds. Like, give me 2 seconds. I'll have him wrapped up. And he's drunk, like he could barely stand. And so I, end up, grabbing him, pin him up against the wall, get him cuffed, walk him outside. I think we just did a catch and release with him. We just took him, found out where he lived and took him home. But I remember sitting there and I'm sweating because of pepper spray and all this other stuff. And I'm just cooking and I'm sitting in the car and I keep coughing because, the pepper keeps getting reactivated every time I sweat more. And I take my t-shirt from inside. You know how you like pull your t-shirt up to kind of wipe your eyes? And I pull my t-shirt up to wipe my eyes and my shirt was full of pepper and I just rubbed it right in both eyeballs.
Oh, man.
I was so mad.
Just reactivated all of it.
Yeah, I wanted to fight my partner so bad. I wanted to just, I'm like, we should do a charity fight. Like, we should do a charity mat, raise money, and gives me an excuse to beat the crap out of you. But, I just do not. That's the other side. You spray somebody and you still got to handle them. Like, man, that's miserable. That is miserable. And I carry pepper. I carry the palm pepper spray as well, the pocket clip version. But I think it is a mistake, man. I think it really is a mistake to take the chokes away. If they're trained and they understand that.
Well, and let's be clear, that was not a choke he was applying.
No.
The reason that this choke has been taken away was not because a choke was used.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
That's the mind boggler. I'm like, wow.
That's the other side of it, right? Like, that wasn't even a choke. Like, I don't know what that dude was doing. That was not a choke. And you can teach the choke so easily to anybody, and how to apply it. And with a properly applied choke, there's a video of John Franco, one of the straight place gym coaches. He's somewhere, a restaurant somewhere, and there's a guy there saying he can't be choked out. And so he tells John, yeah, you can try to choke me out, but it won't work. I can't be choked out. And before John even has one arm completely wrapped around the guy's neck, the guy's going out. and then they wake him up, and the guy's like, whoa. Yeah, whoa. Like when somebody who knows what they're doing does it, most of the time I don't even get my second hand on my arm. Like I don't even completely close the loop, because just with the one hand coming around, once I cut off both sides of their neck, that's it. The blood flow is stopped. And so there shouldn't be any danger to the airway. But again, we're back to training, right? We're back to, they just need to be trained properly. They need to also be in an environment where they're doing it against resistance, not against just some guy who's sitting there letting you do it on in-service day, but against the guy who's actively resisting you, rolling hard to escape, trying to get away from you, and you still manage to hand fight your way in there and sink the choke and apply it properly and all that good stuff. And I think if we had more of that, we'd have a lot less of some of the issues we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, if
Paul,
people
go ahead, Aaron.
If people only understood a rear naked choke is you just wrap that neck and you barely flex your bicep. It's about that much pressure.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's not a lot of pressure. I mean, I just wish people could get that perspective, but that's all I have on it.
Yeah, we'd have to choke a lot of people for them to understand. Like, hey, man, just come here and let me choke you real quick. I would love to do that, especially the Congress. I'd love to have like a Senate hearing or something like that and be like, each one of you guys just come down here, sit down in this chair in front of me, or put my arm around your neck, and you tell me when you feel it. And I think that would solve it.
Oh, man, I will pay a lot of money to see Chuck Schumer in that chair.
Aaron, you beat me to it, man.
Since that's never going to happen, I will. This is a standing offer, Paul. I will come be your dummy any day. You can put me to sleep and wake me back up to show people how safe that is. Man, if we got in front of the right audience, it's like, you need to understand this is a tool that works and it is not deadly.
Right. Yeah, it is not deadly if it's properly applied, man. It's frustrating because it's one of those things where it's almost like the firearms discussion where why can't you just shoot them in the leg? And you try to explain to them it's hard enough to hit a moving target. Yeah. And not only that, but you got the femoral artery, you got all kinds of good stuff in there that could just as easily bleed them out. Like if you're going to shoot them, you need to shoot them to stop the threat.
If we've gotten to the firearm, that threat needs to be neutralized, not impaired.
Yeah,
and that's SOP. If we've gotten to the point where the firearm's out, then we're actually going to use it to neutralize. I'm not trying to kill him. We need to he has to stop advancing and stop doing whatever he's doing. And shooting him in the leg is not a solution.
Exactly. But it's just similar to that discussion where you can't get past. One, I think you can't get past Hollywood. You can't get past the effect of the movies and Hollywood on decision makers. There are people that are making decisions that think Steven Seagal can actually fight. And, and they think that's what a violent confrontation actually looks like, is something they saw. I remember there was an interview with Patrick Swayze, and I guess you shouldn't speak ill of the dead, and I'm not really, it's his words, but there was an interview with him. They were talking about his wife, who is a very attractive woman, and does he ever get concerned about her getting hit on or things like that, And Patrick Swayze's response was, I tell these people, have you ever seen Roadhouse? That's really me in that movie. And nobody blinked. the interviewer, everybody was like, yeah, that's right. And I thought, because you got stuntmen paid to make you look like you can fight, dude. What the, like, you actually believe your own garbage? But the thing is, we have decision makers. We have people who think that it's like a movie, that they think like, yeah, that's how it goes down, man. Like, it's just that easy to deal with a violent confrontation with somebody who doesn't, especially with, your only job is to try to get handcuffs on this person. Your job is not to climb on their back and choke them unconscious. Your job is just to get handcuffs on this person, and their job is to do whatever they got to do to get away. They have no rules. They have no parameters. People don't understand the challenge of that, and it's so hard to get that across to people because they also have the influence of Hollywood.
Well, Paul, one of the best demonstrations I saw of what, essentially what you're saying is the difficulty of that task that everybody thinks is simple, and that's handcuffing folks, is Greg Ellifritz demonstrating with, like, I think it ended up being like 6 or more people that it finally took to get him in that position to handcuff him. Now, granted, Greg's a big dude and he's capable, but the point is that with some effort, if somebody doesn't want to be handcuffed, you're going to have a difficult time doing it.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to do.
So Paul, man, what an awesome discussion. Your insight and commentary on this has been awesome. We really appreciate that. Now, moving kind of into a little bit of a positive note regarding training. So for the folks in the audience, I just wanted to make sure that we covered your contribution to the training community. And, just for a little bit of background, Paul has been a contributor to my mentorship for over a decade. And just recently, I think, Paul, it was about a year and a half ago that I finally got to train with you at Straight Blast Gym in Portland. Time frame, right?
Yeah.
So man, I just want to say that class influenced me greatly.
Awesome.
And it was an awesome time. I had a great weekend hanging out in Portland, but I wanted to kind of hit on some of that. Your jiu-jitsu, being a black belt in jiu-jitsu, you also heavily emphasize the weapons-based environment. And I also wanted to get their audience, if you are interested in some of Paul's content, go to BJJ Fanatics and download Paul's videos. They are a representation. Essentially, they were what we did in the seminar, right? I mean, pretty much you covered the seminar.
Yeah, it was an overview of pretty much all that stuff that we do in the seminar.
Yeah, that was a great time. So you opened a gym. What's it been, 2 or 3 years ago now that you opened your jiu-jitsu gym?
Yeah, it's been about 3 years, and we're finally able to open again.
Man, I was going to ask you that question. So essentially, I heard you mention that you wish that you had done that a long time ago, and the happiness that brings you running that gym. Can you kind of hit on that a little bit?
Yeah. So what I really love about it, and I was just talking about this with a friend of mine, and I was explaining to her that being in the gym every day, teaching, doing this in the manner that I'm doing it now, which is teaching everyday regular folks, not just focusing on people that are going to compete. Prior to this, I was only coaching a competition team and folks that were going to compete, but working with people who come in and they have, for lack of a better descriptor, they have just been beat down by life. They've got layers put on them. They've heard, you suck, you're no good at this, you're not good at that, you know what I mean? They've heard all kinds of negative garbage that's been layered upon them for years and years and years. And to see them come in here, and it's intimidating. I mean, you guys know it's intimidating to walk in the first time and get on a mat and train with a bunch of other people that look like they've been carved out of stone. And, and having no idea that, yeah, man, but they once looked like you. They once looked like pudding, and now they have transformed themselves. And so to have them stick it out, to have them, tough it out and keep coming back and keep getting after it and keep working and see them change. I've got guys that have lost 100 pounds. I've got guys that have transformed almost every aspect of their life after 3-4 years of training. It's very satisfying. And, and like you said, I've mentioned it before. I wish I would have done this a lot sooner. I wish I would have moved into this side of the house a long time ago, because working with competitors is very satisfying. It can be, and it feeds that side of my competitive drive. But working with everyday people who you have a guy come in here and say, man, listen, I was on 12 different medications and now I'm down to one. And the one that I'm down to, I'm only taking half of it compared to a year and a half ago. And have guys come in and say, listen, man, my job, they were telling me, probably going to med board you because you're overweight, you're smoking, you're whatever you're doing, you're not healthy. You can't be on the job, man. You're a liability. And have them 4 months later say, listen, I've dropped 45, 50 pounds. I stopped smoking. I'm drinking more water. I'm eating healthy, taking care of myself. And they're no longer considering med boarding me. They're looking at like, okay, well, yeah, they're still skeptical, but they're at least giving me a chance now. And then 6 months after that, this guy's down 85 pounds, looks like a totally different person. And there's not even on the table to be discussed anymore. Like, he's good to go now, And so being able to do that and see that and be a part of it, I think the word I would use would be facilitate, maybe, because I'm not doing it, I'm not making it happen. I'm making the environment in which it can happen, and then they make it happen. Helping people see that they got that badass side of themselves is immensely satisfying. I mean, you can't put it in words adequately.
Well, isn't the descriptor that a lot of us like to use that are in jiu-jitsu does really, does really save people's lives. It literally does.
It does. Yeah, it sounds, sometimes, you sound, we can sound almost kind of like those guys that show up on your doorstep on Saturday morning and want to talk to you about whatever their thing is.
Yeah.
But, and I'm like, man, I just want to sleep right now. But, it really can be that way. And I tell people same friend that I was talking about this with, I told her, and it was funny. She's been doing jiu-jitsu 4 or 5 years, and I've been doing jiu-jitsu long enough that I tell people, I don't know who I would be without it, but I know who I am with it, and I like who I am with it, and I dig it. And so I think I'm a pretty decent human being.
And that's awesome.
And she said, the thing is, the difference between us is I can remember, because it's only been 4 years. I can remember who I was without jiu-jitsu. And man, do I like who I am with jiu-jitsu. I like who I am so much more with jiu-jitsu. I'm more confident. You know what I mean? And I thought that was pretty cool, because I can't remember, but people like that still can. They can still remember what life was like before doing all this craziness that we do. And that's really cool when they can see for themselves the transformative power of this thing. And it's really powerful. And I think it's because the struggle, the suffering, the uncomfortableness of it all, making yourself do it when you don't want to, making yourself do things you don't want to do. I mean, it's a powerful process. It really does bring about some really transformative things in people, and it helps people surprise themselves. I think that's one of the big things too, is when people had no idea they were capable of doing something and then they see themselves doing it, and then they not just once but repeatedly, consistently do these things. Man, that makes an unstoppable beast, man. That makes somebody who just believes, because now they see the way it works is, I'm just going to buckle down and I'm going to have to suffer for a little bit, but then I'm going to be able to do whatever I want to do. And that's a powerful lesson.
Yeah, no, and I'm so glad that you're open. That is so cool for your members, and we're of course still here, under the fist in Washington, with no hope. We don't even have like a plan or a date or anything. And I'm relatively new to involuntary yoga, so. I started just about a year ago, and we've been out for 4 months now.
Oof.
And it's rough. It's because it really became, I was going 2 to 3 times a week, as much as I possibly could, and to then have it taken away, I was like, oh my gosh. Really, really lame, because it's huge. It's something that we talked about, and that I knew Eric and Aaron did and wanted to do, but I don't want to take away from jiu-jitsu at all by any means, but I do want to ask you, what do you suggest or do in addition to for cardio muscle? Not that anybody that's gone to jiu-jitsu understands you're going to gain all of that doing it.
Yeah.
But obviously if you want to build, some leg mass or some other, or kind of work on that cardio, because obviously cardio is huge in that, just learning to breathe. Are there things that you do outside of the jiu-jitsu gym? I mean, even if it's training in the gym that's not jiu-jitsu, or things that you recommend to people to supplement that? Because I have seen people come in and really struggle with just being physical for an hour.
Oh, yeah.
And and I know that they could benefit from supplementing that with something.
Sure. Yeah. So for me, one of the big ones is running. So I've been a runner pretty much my whole life. My dad set records in state of Maryland and stuff for running. And so he was a middle distance runner. So I kind of have a genetic predisposition to that, but it's really good for you as far as health goes. And also having that aerobic base helps with your recovery between rounds. So it's not going to help you as much during the round, but it's going to help you recover between rounds. So you'll be able to recover quicker. Also, you'll be able to recover after the workout. So I would recommend, like 2-3 times a week, go out for a minimum of 30 minutes, and you'd be surprised at how slow you really need to go to just kind of stay in that zone. Most people could run at about a 10 to 12 minute mile pace and be more than adequately doing something to improve their aerobic capacity. So you don't have to, it's not going to be bad for you if you go out there and crank out 6-minute miles, but you don't have to. I think that's the thing. People need to understand you can run at a pretty leisurely pace and start getting yourself towards your goal or your objective. So I would do that 2 to 3 times a week. And then you're going to need some sort of anaerobic threshold work. If you're not conditioned, if the person isn't conditioned for sprints, don't try to sprint, but something like even just jumping rope, 15 minutes of jumping rope, 15 minutes of some sort of activity, like a burpee type thing, something like that, where you're driving yourself hard into that anaerobic threshold and you're pushing that threshold back. Do that twice a week. I think that would be a big step forward for a lot of folks as far as conditioning goes, particularly for jiu-jitsu and just for life. Like none of us want to die feeble. None of us want to die, as my boss at the site says, Jim Carver, none of us want to die in diapers, so we want to be healthy for the rest of our life for as long as we possibly can. And keeping your heart and your lungs and all that healthy is a big part of that. And then I would say, just for most people, 2 or 3 days a week of lifting weights would probably be pretty good. If you had, say you had an upper body push day and an upper body pull day and then a leg day, you'd be doing all right. Just come in and just stick with the fundamentals, with the basics, the big lifts where you maximize your time in the gym. And if you want to turn yourself into a bodybuilder, that's cool, but you'd be well served with, say, 3-4 sets of an incline bench or dips, 3-4 sets of an overhead press, and then 3-4 sets of some sort of tricep exercise for your upper body push day. Come back in the next day, or even take a day off in between, like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday type thing. Come back in on your next day, and it's your upper body pull day. You could do pull-ups, rows, and some curls, because curls for the girls, and do something like that. And, that's 15, 20 sets max total for that time in there. You're in and out in 30, 40 minutes max. And then come back in for your leg day, and you could do some sort of squat or deadlift. And you're going to want to do something for your calves, just for injury prevention. Every link that's strong is harder to break. So if you can do something for your calves, and that would be your week. That would be a solid week of training, and you would make a serious inroad towards being stronger, healthier, more fit, harder to hurt, harder to kill. And I think if people were to want to specialize or go deeper into it, I'd look at strongman training. I got a lot of benefit out of that. And I think there's a lot of carryover from that to grappling and fighting in general. But yeah, that's usually the recommendations that I give people. That's the stuff that I do for myself. And they'll say you have a guy who is conditioned and is ready to rock and roll. That would, what I just described would be kind of like entry level, beginner level type stuff. You have somebody who's intermediate, more advanced, then yeah, now we're talking about, so Monday, Tuesday, we're going to go out and run like a 5-6 mile, 8-minute mile pace. We'll go out and bang out our first run of the day. That'll be early in the morning. Wednesday, we'll take off from running. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, same thing again, 5-6 miles at easy pace. Sunday will be a threshold day. So Sunday we'll come in, we're going to run maybe 2 miles to warm up, and then we're going to do 1 mile timed runs. So basically you're going to run a mile, balls out, try to do a 6-minute mile. And then we're going to repeat that 5 times. So you'll do 5 timed miles and then do a 2-mile run back home. And then Sunday night, you're not going to lift weights. You're just going to chill, do your active recovery, get your massage gun out, Theragun, whatever you want to call it, and just work your legs and get yourself healed up so you can roll Monday. And then at night, it's the weightlifting schedule is going to kind of look the same. So at night, Monday night, I'll come in, I'll have a upper body push day. Same rep, same set, same basics. I'm just going to, I don't do flat bench unless I'm going to compete in a power meet, because flat bench is hard on your shoulders. If you lay down and move your arms through the movement of a flat bench press, when you get to the bottom and you look at your arm, you're basically Kimuring yourself. So I prefer to not wreck my shoulders. So I do incline press. So I'll come in, I'll do, 4 or 5 sets of incline press, 4 or 5 sets of some sort of overhead press, and then some sort of tricep work. And that's it for my strength work. I don't really go much further than that. Tuesday, same thing. I'm running in the morning. Tuesday night, though, I'll do something that's a little more fun. So I'll do as many clean presses as I can do in 5 minutes with 225. or I'll do something, many snatches as I can do, or something like that, where it's just, it's a little bit of an anaerobic threshold, but it's also strength work. And then Wednesday, I'm going to take off from running. So I'm going to let my knees and ankles rest on Wednesday, but I'm going to come in at night and I'm going to do an upper body pull day. So what I'll do is I'm going to do my pull-ups. I'm going to do multiple variations of pull-ups because that's really important for fighting. Do some rows and again, curls because, and Thursday, same thing. Get up in the morning, get my run in, 5-6 miles, whatever it is, whatever I'm scheduled for. And then Thursday night, I'll come in and I'll do either a body weight workout. Like I'll do let's say one body weight workout I'll do is 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, and 15 air squats.
Mini Murph.
Yeah, I'll do as many of those as I can in 20 minutes. So as many reps as possible of that. Or I'll do every minute on the minute for 20 minutes. I'll do 5 pull-ups and 10 dips or something. I'll do something like that. So, and then Friday I'll come back in. Friday morning, going to be a run. Usually either Thursday or Friday I'll do a threshold run. So basically what I do is I'll do what they call striders. So I will set a timer on my watch, my Fitbit, whatever it is. I'll set a timer on there for 1 minute intervals. And so I'll run as hard as I can for a minute, and then I'll jog for a minute, and I'll do that for 5 miles. And then I'll come in that night for strength, and I'm either going to focus on the deadlift or I'm going to focus on the squat, but I never do both heavy in the same session. So I'll go heavy on deadlifts. So say I'll work up to a heavy triple on a deadlift, and then I'll do 4 or 5 sets of squats, and I'll do some calf stuff, and then that'll be it. Maybe the next week I'll decide I'm going to go heavy on the squat. I'll work up to a heavy triple on the squat, but then with deadlifts, I'll do 3-4 sets of 5-6 reps on the deadlift. Not quite at my max, but enough to get the blood flow going. And then again, calves. Saturday, I'll do my run, and then I'll also do some sort of body weight workout. And then Sunday is the day I'll do the threshold stuff I was telling you about, the 1 mile, I'll say 1 mile time runs or whatever. Sunday night I don't lift. I'll just chill Sunday night and just do some sort of recovery. And then all during that time, I'm doing jiu-jitsu. So I'll do 2 hours of jiu-jitsu every morning and then 2 hours of jiu-jitsu every night. And except for Saturday night and Sunday night, I don't do jiu-jitsu, just in the morning. And that's my normal schedule. Yeah, pretty much, man. Because I don't do any boxing anymore. I don't do any boxing or anything anymore.
It's huge, man. I'm so glad you shared that with us because people don't understand, and if you go back and listen to what he just listed or what he suggested you do, you can pick sections of that to do. You don't have to do all of it. It is a good suggestion to mix it up though. And I do CrossFit and we'll do burpees and pull-ups and all. It's very mixed. It's well scheduled, and I do barbell a couple of times a week. And when I was doing jiu-jitsu, I would do jiu-jitsu too. And there were days where I would hit 3 workouts in a day and people thought I was insane. And I'm like, this is actually what I need to do to succeed though.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I look at it like, it's like if you told me, hey, you need to eat better food, you need to do this, you need to do that to improve your health. And I said, well, man, I can't afford to eat better food. But then you see me grabbing like a bag of McDonald's, or you see me drinking Starbucks or whatever it might be. It's not that I can't afford it. It's just that I'm putting the money in the wrong place,
Yeah.
And it's the same with that. It's not that we don't have time. It's that we're putting the time in the wrong place. I'm sitting down to watch TV. You know what I mean? Like I'm hanging out over here doing this or I'm doing that. It's like, listen, man, yeah, I'm training 2-3 times a day, but I'm making the time. I'm making it happen. And it's what I need to do because I have a certain vision in my head of myself. I have a certain ideal of what I want to do. And this is how I get there. and this is what I've got to do. And so, yeah, like, what I mean? Like, I'm not harshing on the dude who's sitting on the couch not doing anything. And so don't harsh on me for investing 3-4 hours a day into making myself a little more capable.
That's awesome. That's just awesome. Well, I think Aaron's got something he wants to follow up here with, but obviously, this was going to come up at some point. We're definitely going to have you back, and next time we're going to talk about weapons too, because there's something there's another thing we haven't even touched on. So, and that's all that'll basically, I think we'll be able to wrap a whole show around that. So that'd
be fun.
Yeah, for sure. So, what do you got, Aaron?
Well, Paul, so this is probably, and we're going to, maybe get a little somber here, but this is probably the most important question that gets asked on our show. What are your top three bands?
Top three bands. Oh man, that's a good one. Man, that changes day to day. So, Iron Maiden for sure is always in the top. Led Zepp, always in the top. Sure. And then, man, I kind of bounce back and forth sometimes, because sometimes I'll pick a more modern group, and then sometimes I'll bounce back to Black Sabbath. Like I just that Ronnie James Dio voice, man. I just got a thing, man. I hear him singing, I'm like, yeah, But I've been digging a lot of Foo Fighters for the last few years. Last 4 or 5 years, I've been really digging a lot of their stuff, and they've been kind of.
I have to interject. That's one of the coolest bands ever. So I'm with you.
Yeah, they have nudged their way into like probably the top three. If I had to narrow it down to three, it would be those three.
Man, nice. you just made my day, brother. So, and then one follow up on that, which was really dang cool to me. A lot of people won't know him, but I saw you share the Winery Dogs on Facebook.
Yeah.
Definitely one of my favorite bands. I'm a guitar player, and actually the music on our show is from me and Eric, actually.
Yeah, and very cool.
But, coming up from the late 80s and early 90s, I'm kind of not stuck, but I'm back to my shred guitar youth. And Richie Kotzen happened to come out of that whole shred era and still be relevant.
That guy's voice is amazing. Like he has kind of that Chris Cornell kind of vibe in his voice. That's really cool.
Oh yeah, and he does it great live. My 14-year-old son and I went to see them, and it was a killer concert.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm trying to think of who. I want to say it was like Tony McAlpine or somebody like that. One of those shred dudes from the 80s and 90s. Maybe it was Jason Becker, one of those guys. I saw an interview.
You know these guys. That's awesome.
Yeah, I want to say I saw some sort of interview with one of those guys, and they mentioned Richie Kotzen, and I was like, who's that? And so I went and checked him out, and I was like, holy cow. Like I had no idea that much soul could be found in shred.
That's a very good way to put it, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, he's just really good, man. And I like, and Billy Sheehan has always just impressed me. He's just I got to meet him and just instantly impressed. Really cool dude. And, for a guy to stick with that 4-string bass and just do what he does with that, it's just mind blowing.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I saw.
And go ahead, buddy.
No, I was going to say, I saw Volumes about a year ago, and I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're kind of a newer metal type thing. And I saw Volumes play, and they had guys up there. They were playing like 8-string guitars, 7-string guitars, 7-string basses, and all this. And it's very impressive, very cool. They're excellent musicianship. But there's just something about a guy like Jocko or Billy Sheehan who gets up there with the 4-string bass, or Eddie Van Halen, or even Clapton, just a regular Stratocaster, nothing special, or Telecaster, and just killing it, just tearing it up.
So what we have to do at TACCon is when we get done for a day, we need to go have a beer and talk music, because we can talk a lot of stuff, man.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. You know, it's like everything else we do, right? You know, you have these. It's cool. All the gear is cool, but seeing a master just take like a stock Glock 17 or a nothing special Stratocaster or just a 4-string bass and or Bonham, you know, single pedal bass, you know what I mean, and just crush it. Just yeah.
Well, let me tell you, Paul, you are number one guest to answer the music question. So, you know, you're going to be hard to beat, man.
Nice. Very cool.
So,
I got that going for me.
Yeah. Again, we'll get into that in person one of these days. But man, we need to let you go. We've gone long here, but man, what an awesome interview. You touched on some amazing topics and gave so much perspective in, you know, so many areas. You're a subject matter expert in a lot of stuff that up until now, even people didn't realize, I think. So you guys have anything else for Paul?
Oh man, plenty, but we're going to hold it for another show.
Yeah, man, let's do it.
All I can say is I'm so glad we finally got this together, Paul. It's incredible content, and we will benefit. This is one of the cool parts about doing this show is we benefit for posterity what we get out of our guests, and I know that our audience is going to get a lot out of this. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thanks, guys, for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's a fun conversation.
Good, man. All right, well, good night, guys.
Good night.
Take care, guys.
All right. Later.
Hey, that was a great interview, man. I just always enjoy having guys that are, you know, doers in the industry on the show. And I mean, he is one of those guys that's out there making it happen, helping other people become better at their skill and their trade, man. And it is just, it's wonderful to have those conversations where we get a little more in depth too. So that was awesome. But we're going to move into the accountability portion of the show here, and I'll kick it off. Again, as we mentioned before, I've been a little absent because I've been doing some new stuff, which is good. I don't like missing the show, but I'll start off with I got back in the gym, man. This is huge. Washington is still under some crazy control right now, but we actually are able to have CrossFit classes as long as we keep our spacing, keep our class sizes low. Our gym has been extremely accommodating, and I've been getting, for the past 2 weeks, I've actually gotten like 3 to 4 classes in, and I was actually there at the 6 a.m. this morning and got a bunch of cleans and a bunch of pull-ups and some running done, you know. And just wonderful to be back in there getting that done. But yeah, I got, so for the past 7 days, I've actually got 4 workouts in. And I did get out, and I'll start including this probably. I've actually flown 3 times in the past week, and that has been awesome. I'm trying to get my hours stacked up so I can get out there and test. Actually, I was at CrossFit this morning at 6. I actually managed to squeeze a flight in at lunch around noon. And we're here in the evening this time recording and doing this as well. So really, really happy to be doing all that.
Killer.
Got some live fire in as well. Been fun. I'll be honest,
awesome.
been falling off of my dry fire a little bit, but I have been getting some live fire in, and I did shoot the drill and also have apparently a listening curve because we talk about this stuff in person and we describe the drill, and it's right there. Man, I could go right to the internet and listen to it, but apparently that drill was at 10 yards, excuse me, and I shot it at 5 yards, so I did very well. Let's just say I may have the best times and the best scores out of the group, but and you know, it's something I want to point out though. This is, you know, when we do CrossFit, you know, there's always room to scale the workout. There is always room to scale the drill. If we prescribe,
if we prescribe 10 yards and you're just not there proficiency wise, I would much rather you shot that drill at 5 yards and got them all in the rings they need to go in. And one thing that I actually noticed and was able to do at 5 yards was I was able to push myself fairly hard and still keep them all on target. I didn't miss any of my headshots. At 10 yards, had I pushed myself the way I did, I probably would have missed several, and that didn't happen because of the distance. But you can always then start to build on that and move away. And I did shoot both of them in under 5 seconds. I think it was about a 443 and a 473, I think, respectively, with the 5 to the body, 1 to the head, and then just, strong hand only. And those were both shot clean, of course, at that distance. But it is something that I am going to go work on, and the drill we're talking about today will be a little bit more of that work. But so I'll be backing that up to the 10 yards and doing some more work. But really cool to get out there, shoot, get out there, fly, do some exercise. Still waiting on jiu-jitsu gyms, and we talked about that a little earlier. Man, it's just a bummer deal here right now. But we got things coming. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Aaron. What do you got?
Hey, man, just wanted to say it's awesome to hear you getting to go do some live fire. I know you've been itching to do that, so I love hearing about that. Yes. So I had a turnabout my week this week. I went to 2 jiu-jitsu classes, and one of them was what we call reflex class. You guys would call it intermediate. And we went 2 times through the entire combatives test. Now, that's your first belt that you get in the Gracie program. And I realized that I am further along in being ready to test than I thought. And so I am now going to switch my priorities from shooting to jiu-jitsu so I can get my test done. So I've been spending a lot of time watching the full test videos on Gracie University. And then I've been studying all of the techniques, and because you have to do them all in a specific order. So having all the techniques ready there in your mind, just kind of like you're studying for an exam, it's good to have ready to go. So I've got a good example because I've watched my wife teach for 2 different belts at our school, and she's nailed them both. I mean, maybe like missing like a couple of things, and it's really hard to do clean on those tests. I bet you guys know that. So yeah, shooting's going to be my second priority right now, although I'm maintaining my dry firing. Now, I have to admit, I was real busy this week with some gigs, so on a couple of days I forgot to dry fire and felt bad about it at the end of the day. But so now I'm still dry firing, working really hard at that. But so I did get to the range. That's one thing I've been lucky to be able to do, is keep going to the range as long as I have ammo. I think I'm down to 50 rounds again. I've got a shipment coming in though.
Boo.
Yeah. So on the drill of the week, I happened to listen to the prescribed yardage there, Brian. But just got to rib you there. But now I want to explain something real fast, and so I can let Eric get done with his. But I'm going to kind of approach this a little bit different, because we've really been digging into Lanny Basham's teaching and his coaching methods. And there's one thing that you'll hear about or learn about with his curriculums, is that he does not want you focusing on negative performance. So what I'm going to give out here is that not only I did not shoot all these drills clean like I always do. I did them 3 times each. My other scores were not perfect or clean, but I will give my top scores on these. On the strong hand only, I did a 5.9, and that was clean, -0. And then the 4 shots to the body, 1 to the head, I did that in 4.94 at -0. So I'm glad about those scores. I'm going to focus on those and not the others. So that's my accountability. Eric, how about you, brother?
Hey guys, great accountability. Always love hearing it. So I'm going to jump right into mine, and I'm going to have a little bit of a different focus as well. I'm going to kind of focus on my dry fire. And before I talk about the drills that I worked on, which was partly the drill of the week and some others, I want to talk about reading, and I've been reading the Dry Fire Primer by Annette Evans. And let me tell you guys, if you don't have that book out in the audience, you need to go out and get it, because it's a superb representation of what we should be doing in dry fire. So go out there and grab that book and support her. And guys, I'm going to ask you all a question, and I may slap myself for asking this question. Have you guys ever heard of dry fire pants?
No.
Mm-mm.
So I feel silly all my years of dry fire and espousing dry fire. I'm not sure why I did not come up with this myself. So in dry fire practice, we want to mitigate either excuses of getting the work done, or also reducing the amount of time it takes us to do the drills. So essentially what Annette suggests is that you have a pair of pants always set up with a belt just like the one you carry or use in competition, and the holster and mag pouch that you use in competition or carry. Hang your timer on those pants, and make sure that you have your magazines and your dummy rounds in those pants as well. So essentially you just go work pants off, dry fire pants on, and you're ready to go. I thought that was
great.
awesome.
Wow, I like it.
Yeah, so I wanted to mention that in the accountability. That's something that all of us should do. Now, as far as my dry fire practice, I hit up 5 times this week, and the thing that I was focusing on was transitions. And per Ben Stoger's book, focusing on only the visual part, meaning that, for folks that understand transitions and keeping that speed up, is that your eyes move before your gun does, because your vision can move faster than your arms efficiently. So we focus on that. But without trigger press, it lets you isolate the visual piece. So that's been a big part of my dry fire and huge improvement. I also did the dry fire drills for the 2 prescribed, the strong hand only and the 4 to the chest, 1 to the head. And I will tell you, what I've been trying to do in my dry fire is get the times down to masterclass level and call the shots properly. So I was able to do that. However, folks, dry fire you can do faster. So I'm not saying that I'm meeting those current goals. So as far as workouts this week, I've had some breakthroughs on a couple of areas, namely my pull-ups and chin-ups, and also my dips. So one of the things I was kind of excited about was I was able to complete 4 sets of 12 chin-ups strict. Now, that's not a lot for a lot of folks out there, but after having a back injury, I've been having to come back from where I used to be, and so I was pretty pumped about that. So I'm going to kind of just leave my accountability at that this week and go ahead and prescribe the drill of the week. So hitting on transitions. This is a drill we prescribed a while back, so we're going to do a retest. And that we're going to do this at 5 yards, and we're going to have 2 targets set up at a yard apart. You're going to start the first transition drill, 1 shot on T1, 1 shot on T2. That's string 1. String 2 is going to be 2 shots on T1, 2 shots on T2, and then 3 and 3. And then you'll have a total. So again, if we're going by IDPA rules, any shots down adds a second to that time. So let's get out there and shoot and work on our transitions. Again, even before that, folks, try the Ben Stoger suggestion of just working your visual transitions in dry practice. Then go out and do the live fire drill. What's that sound like, guys?
Sounds great. And before we get off here, I'll just interject that Mike Brown, of course, on my last coaching session with him, he said that your money in IDPA is made between targets. So I think that's a great drill for us to work on that.
Absolutely.
Well, you guys want to call it a show for now?
Absolutely. Been a good night, man.
Yeah, great time, guys. You have a good evening.
Take care, guys.